Admiral Krelnuk stared at the holographic display with the kind of desperation that made his three eyes twitch in sequence. The red dots representing Vexor battlecruisers were spreading across the galaxy like some sort of cosmic rash, and frankly, the Galactic Council was out of options, dignity, and decent coffee. "So let me get this straight," he muttered to his aide, a nervous little creature named Bliptar who had the unfortunate habit of changing colors when stressed. Right now, Bliptar was cycling through every shade of anxiety known to science. "We've exhausted the warrior races of 17 different star systems. Our most elite forces are either dead or running away screaming, and now we're reduced to begging the humans for help?" "Not just any help, sir," Bliptar squeaked, now a particularly unflattering shade of worried yellow. "We specifically requested their weakest soldier. Someone expendable. You know, cannon fodder." Krelnox nodded grimly. It made perfect military sense. Send in the weakest human first to gauge Vexar capabilities. When the poor schmuck inevitably got vaporized, at least they'd have some tactical data to work with. It was cold, calculating, and absolutely necessary for the survival of galactic civilization. The transport ship docked with all the fanfare of a garbage scow, which should have been their first clue something was off. Out stepped what had to be the most inappropriately cheerful being Krelnoxkar had ever encountered in 40 years of military service. "Good morning, everyone." The human bounced out of the airlock like he was attending a birthday party instead of a war council. "I'm Corporal Danny Murphy, Earth Medical Corps, and I am absolutely delighted to be here." Krelnox's aide whispered frantically, "Sir, there must be some mistake. This one doesn't look weak at all. He's practically glowing with, is that happiness?" Danny Murphy was indeed practically glowing, mostly because he'd apparently decided that military dress code was more of a suggestion. His uniform was regulation, sure, but covered in so many medical patches and equipment pouches that he looked like a walking pharmacy. The massive red cross on his helmet was so bright it could probably be seen from orbit. "Now, I know what you're all thinking," Danny continued, seemingly oblivious to the confused stares of every alien in the docking bay. "You asked for Earth's weakest soldier, and here I am. I've never fired a shot in anger, never thrown a punch in combat, and my kill count is a perfect 0. Exactly what you ordered." Admiral Krelnox felt his primary stomach dropping into his secondary stomach. "Excuse me, Corporal Murphy, but when we said weakest, we meant—" "Oh, I know exactly what you meant," Danny interrupted with a grin that could power a small space station. "You wanted someone who wouldn't escalate the violence, right? Someone who'd approach this whole war situation with a different perspective? Well, you got him. 200 confirmed saves and counting, baby." "Saves?" Lieutenant Kor, the Admiral's tactical officer, spoke up with the kind of confusion usually reserved for advanced quantum mechanics. "What exactly does that mean?" Denny's grins somehow got even brighter, which several aliens had previously thought was physically impossible. "Oh, that's my specialty. I save people. All kinds of people. Our people, their people, people who are shooting at me, people who probably should be shooting at me but are too polite to start. I'm what you might call an equal opportunity lifesaver." The docking bay fell silent except for the sound of Bliptar cycling through colors so fast he was starting to strobe. "Let me see if I understand this correctly," Admiral Krelnox said slowly, the way one might address a small child or an unexploded bomb. "Earth sent us a soldier whose primary skill is keeping the enemy alive?" "Well, when you put it like that, it sounds counterproductive," Danny laughed, completely missing the point. "But trust me, it works. You'd be amazed how confused people get when someone they're trying to kill starts trying to save their life instead. Really throws off their whole battle rhythm." Captain Vexai, who had been quietly having what appeared to be an existential crisis in the corner, finally spoke up. "This is insane. We're fighting a war against the most ruthless empire in the galaxy, and Earth sends us someone whose weapon of choice is— what, bandages?" Denny patted his oversized medical kit affectionately. "Oh, I've got way more than bandages in here. Surgical lasers, plasma coagulators, emergency surgery equipment, stimulants, sedatives, and my personal favorite, a portable defibrillator that can restart a heart from 50 meters away. You'd be surprised how versatile medical equipment can be in the right hands." The way he said it, with that innocent smile and cheerful tone, somehow made it sound more terrifying than if he'd been describing weapons of mass destruction. "Right," Admiral Krelnox said faintly. "And Earth's military command thought you were the best choice for this mission because—" "Because I am the weakest soldier they have," Danny replied happily. "I mean, what could be weaker than someone who refuses to kill anybody? I'm basically defenseless." As the corporal wandered off to explore his new temporary home, chattering about setting up a medical bay and asking if anyone needed their vitals checked, Admiral Krelnox had the sinking feeling that Earth's definition of weak and the galaxy's definition of weak were about to cause some serious complications. "Sir," Bliptar whispered, now a deep shade of purple that usually indicated impending doom, "I think we may have made a terrible mistake." "Oh, I'm absolutely certain we have," Krelnox replied, watching Danny Murphy disappear down a corridor while humming what sounded suspiciously like a funeral march. "The question is whether it's our mistake or theirs." Day 1 of Danny Murphy's deployment aboard the GCS Retribution started at 500 hours, with what Admiral Krelnox would later describe in his official report as the most unsettling wake-up call in recorded military history. "Good morning, crew of the Retribution." Danny's voice echoed through the ship's communications system with the enthusiasm of a children's show host. "This is your new resident medic, reminding everyone to stay hydrated, get plenty of sleep, and remember that proper posture prevents lower back pain. Also, if anyone needs their blood pressure checked, I'll be in what used to be Storage Bay 7 but is now the ship's new medical facility." Captain Vexai, who had been enjoying a peaceful moment of prebatal meditation, nearly fell out of his command chair. "He did what to Storage Bay 7? Lieutenant Kor consulted his tablet with the grim efficiency of someone reading an obituary. "According to the overnight logs, sir, Corporal Murphy requisitioned 17 different compartments, rerouted power to 14 different medical devices, and somehow convinced Engineer Piplo to help him install what he's calling a trauma bay with mood lighting." "Mood lighting," Captain Vexai repeated flatly. "In a war zone. He said it helps patients feel more comfortable during emergency surgery," Kir continued, his voice getting higher with each word. "He also installed speakers that play something called smooth jazz, because it reduces surgical stress." Before anyone could process this information properly, Danny himself appeared on the bridge, carrying what looked like a medical scanner and wearing the kind of smile that made hardened warriors question their life choices. "Captain Vexai, perfect timing," Danny chirped, pointing his scanner at the captain like he was conducting an orchestra. "Your stress hormones are through the roof, your secondary heart is beating irregularly, and when's the last time you had a proper physical? I'm reading some concerning data here." "I am preparing for battle against the most dangerous enemy in the galaxy," Vexai growled. "Of course my stress hormones are elevated." "That's exactly why we need to address this," Danny replied, completely missing the point. "Combat effectiveness drops by 37% when stress hormones exceed optimal levels. Here, try this breathing exercise I learned from a Zen master on Kepler 422b. What followed was the surreal sight of Danny Murphy attempting to guide the bridge crew through meditation techniques, while enemy ships appeared on the long-range sensors. Engineer Piplo, who had been quietly monitoring the situation from his station, suddenly spoke up in his characteristic nervous babble. Corporal Murphy, sir, not to interrupt the relaxation session, but we've got 17 Vexstar scout ships approaching, and they're not coming to check our cholesterol levels." Danny's face lit up like someone had just told him about a 2-for-1 sale on bandages. "Excellent! Our first opportunity to demonstrate proper battlefield medical protocols." "Battlefield medical protocols?" Lieutenant Kor squeaked. "Oh yes." Danny pulled out what appeared to be a standard medical kit, except it was roughly the size of a small vehicle and covered in warning labels. "See, most military medics wait for casualties to happen. That's reactive medicine. I practice proactive medicine." Admiral Krelnox, who had arrived just in time to witness this conversation, felt his third eye begin twitching again. "Corporal, what exactly does proactive battlefield medicine involve?" "Well, Admiral, I'm glad you asked," Danny began, unpacking his kit with the enthusiasm of a child on Christmas morning. "Instead of waiting for people to get hurt, we prevent them from getting hurt in the first place. For example, did you know that most starship injuries occur because crew members don't stretch properly before combat?" The bridge fell silent except for the sound of approaching enemy vessels and what might have been Lieutenant Kor quietly whimpering. "He wants us to stretch," Captain Vexai said slowly. "Before battle, he wants the crew to stretch. Dynamic stretching increases flexibility by up to 40% and reduces injury risk by 60%, Danny confirmed cheerfully. "I've also prepared individual vitamin supplements for each crew member based on their species' nutritional requirements." "Did you know that Zephyrin warriors perform significantly better when their iron levels are optimized?" Engineer Piplo, who happened to be Zephyrian, perked up despite himself. "Actually, that's scientifically accurate. How did you—" "Medical school," Danny beamed. Plus, I did my thesis on multi-species combat physiology. Fascinating stuff. For instance, Captain Vexai, your people's combat effectiveness increases by 23% in slightly higher oxygen environments. I took the liberty of adjusting the atmospheric controls in all combat areas. Captain Vexai blinked in surprise. You? That's actually... How could you possibly know that? Research, Danny replied happily. If I'm going to keep everyone alive, I need to understand exactly how everyone works. Speaking of which, Lieutenant Kor, you haven't eaten in 14 hours. Your people's cognitive function drops significantly during extended fasting periods. Here, he tossed what appeared to be a nutrition bar to the bewildered lieutenant, who caught it reflexively. This is insane, Admiral Krelnox muttered. We're about to engage in mortal combat, and our human tactical consultant is handing out snacks and adjusting the air conditioning. Technically, I'm optimizing crew performance through evidence-based medical interventions, Danny corrected with a grin. But sure, let's call it snacks and air conditioning. Now, shall we go save some lives? The way he said it, with that same innocent enthusiasm, somehow made the approaching battle sound less like impending doom and more like an exciting field trip to a medical conference. When the first Vextar missiles impacted the ship's shields, everyone on the bridge instinctively braced for the worst. Everyone except Danny Murphy, who immediately started taking notes on his tablet like he was documenting a particularly interesting case study. Fascinating, he announced over the sound of alarms and exploding consoles. Classic kinetic impact trauma response. Captain, I'm reading elevated adrenaline across the entire bridge crew. This is exactly the kind of situation where proper medical intervention can make all the difference. Corporal Murphy, Admiral Krelnox shouted over the chaos, this might not be the best time for a medical lecture. On the contrary, Admiral, this is the perfect time, Danny replied, somehow managing to sound even more cheerful as the ship shook around them. Combat stress responses are best managed in real time. Lieutenant Kor, your breathing's getting shallow. Try the 478 technique we practiced. Lieutenant Kor, who was currently trying to coordinate defensive maneuvers while having what appeared to be a mild panic attack, stared at Danny with the expression of someone questioning the fundamental nature of reality. Are you seriously trying to give me breathing exercises while we're being shot at? Absolutely. Panic breathing reduces cognitive function by up to 50%. Danny pulled out what looked like a standard medical scanner, but was apparently also capable of analyzing tactical data. Speaking of which, I'm detecting multiple hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. Perfect opportunity to demonstrate emergency field medicine. Before anyone could stop him, Danny grabbed his impossibly large medical kit and sprinted toward the nearest turbo lift, calling back over his shoulder, "Don't worry, I'll have those crew members stabilized and back to fighting fitness in no time." Should we stop him? Engineer Piplo asked nervously. With what army? Captain Vexai replied grimly. The man just ran toward explosions while humming. I'm not getting in his way. What happened next would be discussed in military academies for generations, though most instructors would preface it with disclaimers about not trying this at home. Denny arrived at the damaged sections to find chaos. Hull breaches, injured crew members, and the kind of structural damage that usually meant you started writing farewell letters. Instead of the expected scene of a medic trying to triage the wounded, however, the bridge crew watched in amazement through the security feeds as Danny somehow turned disaster management into performance art. Okay, everyone, I need you to listen carefully. Danny's voice came through the comm system with the kind of calm authority usually reserved for experienced surgeons. First priority is stopping the bleeding. Second priority is structural integrity. Third priority is getting everyone back to their stations. Corporal, came a weak voice from one of the injured crew members. The hull breach is getting bigger. Shouldn't we evacuate this section? Evacuate? Danny's laugh was audible across 3 decks. My friend, we're not evacuating anywhere. We're going to fix this hull breach, using basic medical principles and a lot of improvised engineering. What followed was a masterclass in what happened when someone with extensive medical training decided that spaceships were just really complicated patients. Danny used surgical lasers to weld hull breaches, medical-grade sealants to stop atmospheric leaks, and somehow convinced his portable defibrillator to restart a damaged power coupling. This is impossible, Admiral Krelnox muttered, watching the feeds. He's treating the ship like it's a living organism. Sir, Lieutenant Kor reported, his voice filled with the kind of awe usually reserved for religious experiences. Structural integrity in the damaged sections is actually improving. He's not just patching the holes, he's somehow making the ship stronger than it was before. But the real show started when Danny encountered his first Vextar boarding party. The enemy soldiers had breached the ship through one of the damaged sections, expecting to find panicked crew members and easy targets. Instead, they found one human in a medical uniform, standing in the middle of the corridor, with his hands clasped behind his back, and a smile that could have powered a small sun. "Good evening, gentlemen," Danny called out cheerfully. "I'm Corporal Murphy, ship's medical officer. I couldn't help but notice you've sustained some injuries during your boarding action. That plasma burn on your leader's left arm looks particularly nasty." The Vexstar soldiers, who had been expecting resistance or surrender, instead found themselves being addressed like patients in a doctor's office. Their squad leader, a particularly fierce-looking warrior with ceremonial scars and enough weaponry to level a city block, stared at Danny with complete bewilderment. "Human," the squad leader growled, "we are here to capture this vessel. Surrender or be destroyed." "Oh, I'm sure you are," Danny replied with genuine enthusiasm. "But before we get to all that unpleasantness, can I interest you in some basic first aid? That plasma burn is definitely going to get infected if we don't treat it properly. And trust me, you do not want to deal with a systemic infection in the middle of a military campaign." The Vextar soldiers looked at each other with the kind of confusion usually reserved for advanced mathematics or abstract philosophy. "Are you offering to treat our wounds?" the squad leader asked slowly. "Of course, it's literally my job," Danny began, unpacking his medical kit with the enthusiasm of someone who had just found their calling. "Now, this might sting a little, but I promise it's better than the alternative." What happened next would be replayed in security footage for years to come. Danny Murphy, Earth's allegedly weakest soldier, somehow managed to disarm an entire Vextar boarding party not through violence, but through the simple expedient of being so aggressively helpful that they completely forgot why they were there. By the time backup arrived, they found the enemy soldiers sitting in a neat row while Danny bandaged their wounds and explained the importance of proper battlefield hygiene. "This is the strangest thing I have ever witnessed," Captain Vexai announced over the comm. He's actually treating them." "Not just treating them, sir," came Danny's cheerful voice through the speakers. "I'm also explaining how their weapons systems work. Did you know that Vextar plasma rifles have a critical design flaw that makes them prone to overheating? I've been showing them how to modify the cooling systems for better efficiency." The bridge fell silent except for the sound of Admiral Krelnock's three eyes twitching in perfect synchronization. "He's helping the enemy improve their weapons," Lieutenant Kor said faintly. "While treating their injuries," Engineer Piplo added. "During a battle," Captain Vexai concluded. "I think," Admiral Krelnox said slowly, "we may need to revise our understanding of what Earth considers weakness." 3 hours after the boarding incident, which was now being referred to in official reports as the most polite military engagement in recorded history, Danny Murphy made a decision that would either end the war or get him court-martialed. Possibly both. "I'm going over there," he announced to the bridge crew, pointing at the massive Vextar dreadnought that had been pummeling their shields for the better part of an hour. Admiral Krelnox looked up from his tactical display with the expression of someone who had just been told that gravity was optional. "I'm sorry, Corporal, did you just say you want to board an enemy warship?" "Not want to, Admiral. Need to." Danny was already suiting up in what appeared to be a standard EVA suit, except it had been modified with so many medical sensors and emergency equipment pouches that it looked like a pharmacy had mated with a spacesuit. "I've been monitoring their ship's biosignatures, and they've got at least 40 crew members in critical condition from our return fire. Basic medical ethics require that I render aid." "Basic medical ethics," Captain Vexai repeated slowly, "require you to help the people who are currently trying to kill us." "Well, when you put it like that, it sounds counterproductive," Danny replied with his trademark grin. "But consider the tactical advantages: intelligence gathering, potential diplomatic contact, and the opportunity to demonstrate superior human medical technology. Plus, their wounded crew members aren't exactly going to be shooting at us while they're unconscious, are they?" Lieutenant Kor consulted his tablet with the grim efficiency of someone reading his own obituary. "Sir, he's not wrong about the tactical intelligence, and technically, rendering medical aid to enemy combatants is protected under 17 different galactic conventions." "Protected, yes," Admiral Krelnox muttered. "Advisable, that's a completely different question." But Danny was already heading for the shuttle bay, his medical kit bouncing cheerfully behind him like an enthusiastic puppy. "Don't worry, everyone. I'll be back before you know it, and hopefully with some new friends." 20 minutes later, Danny Murphy became the first human in galactic history to request permission to board an enemy warship for medical purposes. The Vextar response was, unsurprisingly, somewhat confused. "Unknown human vessel. came the gravelly voice of what was presumably the Vexstar commander. "Explain your intentions, or be destroyed." "Good afternoon." Danny's cheerful voice cut through the static like a lighthouse beam through fog. "This is Corporal Danny Murphy of the Earth Medical Corps. I'm requesting permission to come aboard and provide emergency medical assistance to your wounded crew members. I've got surgical supplies, pain medication, and a really impressive portable X-ray machine." The comm channel fell silent for so long that everyone on the Retribution assumed Danny had been vaporized. Then, finally, came the most bewildered response in military history. "You want to help our wounded?" "Absolutely, it's what I do," Danny replied with the enthusiasm of someone discussing their favorite hobby. "I've got my medical scanner data showing at least 40 crew members in various states of trauma, and honestly, some of those readings are keeping me up at night. Particularly whoever's in your engineering section, that poor soul needs immediate attention for what looks like severe plasma burns and possible internal bleeding." Another long silence. Then, "Permission granted, but any aggressive action will result in immediate destruction." "Wouldn't dream of it," Danny replied cheerfully. "Aggressive action is terrible for patient outcomes." What followed was perhaps the most surreal prisoner exchange in galactic history, except instead of prisoners, it was one overly enthusiastic medic voluntarily walking into enemy hands while carrying enough medical equipment to stock a small hospital. Commander Zarthok of the Vexstar Empire was a being who had spent 30 years perfecting the art of intimidation. He stood 7 feet tall, had enough ceremonial scars to tell the story of a dozen campaigns, and possessed the kind of presence that made hardened warriors reconsider their life choices. He was completely unprepared for Danny Murphy. "So you're the infamous human medic," Zarthok growled, trying to loom menacingly over his unexpected guest. "The one who treated our boarding party." "That's me," Danny replied brightly, apparently immune to intimidation. "And you must be Commander Zarthok. I've been reading your biosignature from across the battlefield, and I have to say, I'm concerned about your stress levels. When's the last time you had a proper medical examination?" Zarthok blinked, which was not the response he was accustomed to during interrogations. What? "Your cardiovascular system is showing signs of chronic stress. Your hormone levels suggest you haven't been sleeping properly. And don't even get me started on what your diet is doing to your digestive tract." Danny began unpacking his medical kit with the efficiency of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. "Now, I know what you're thinking. Why would an enemy medic care about your health? But here's the thing. Unhealthy commanders make poor decisions, and poor decisions lead to more casualties on both sides." "Are you suggesting that I'm unfit for command?" Zarthok's voice carried the kind of dangerous edge that usually preceded someone getting thrown out of an airlock. "Oh, not at all," Danny waved dismissively while setting up what appeared to be a portable surgical suite. "I'm suggesting that you're operating at maybe 60% efficiency due to preventable health issues, and that's a tragedy for someone of your obvious tactical brilliance. Here, let me show you what I mean." Before Zarthok could object, Danny had somehow maneuvered him into a medical scanner and was reading off results like a particularly enthusiastic professor. "See this? Elevated cortisol levels indicating chronic stress. This here? Vitamin D deficiency, common problem on long-space voyages. And this reading suggests you've been ignoring some pretty significant joint pain in your left shoulder, probably an old war wound you never properly treated." Zarthok stared at the readouts in amazement. The human was right about everything, including the shoulder injury from a battle 15 years ago that still ached during long shifts. "How could you possibly know all this?" he demanded. "Medical school, battle experience, and genuine concern for sentient life," Danny replied cheerfully. "Now, about those wounded crew members of yours. I know we're technically enemies and all, but suffering is suffering, you know. Mind if I take a look at them?" And that was how Commander Zarthok, terror of the Outer Rim and scourge of 17 star systems, found himself giving a guided tour of his own medical bay to an enemy medic who kept offering helpful suggestions about proper wound care and the importance of keeping emergency supplies properly stocked. "This is unprecedented," Zarthok muttered as he watched Danny work on a severely injured Vexstar engineer. "In 30 years of warfare, I have never encountered anything like this." "Like what?" Danny asked, not looking up from his patient. "Basic medical ethics?" "An enemy who genuinely wants to help," Zarthok replied quietly. "Tell me, human, why did you really come here?" Danny paused in his work and looked up with that same innocent smile that had been confusing military personnel across 2 star systems. "You know, Commander, people keep asking me that question, and the answer is always the same. Because someone needs help, and I know how to help them. It's really that simple. Simple, Zarthok repeated, watching as Danny's patient, his own chief engineer, began breathing more easily. Nothing about this situation is simple. Sure it is, Danny replied cheerfully. I'm a medic. You have wounded? I fix wounded. Everything else is just politics. And honestly, politics never saved anyone's life. For the first time in 30 years, Commander Zarthok found himself completely at a loss for words. 2 hours later, Danny Murphy returned to the Retribution with what Admiral Krell Knox would later describe as the most insane battle plan in military history. Right, Danny announced to the assembled command staff, pulling up a holographic display that looked more like a medical chart than a tactical briefing. Here's what we're going to do. Instead of trying to destroy the Vexstar fleet, we're going to disable it and provide comprehensive medical support to all casualties. The silence that followed was so complete that the ship's life support system sounded like a thunderstorm. I'm sorry, Admiral Krell Knox said carefully. Did you just propose we turn a military engagement into a humanitarian mission? Exactly, Danny beamed. See, Commander Zarthok and I had a fascinating conversation about military logistics. Turns out the Vexstar Empire has been expanding so aggressively because they're desperately trying to find new medical resources. Their healthcare system is basically non-existent. Captain Vexguy made a noise that might have been laughter or might have been a nervous breakdown. So your solution is to give them healthcare? Think about it tactically, Danny continued, completely ignoring the looks of disbelief around him. What's the primary motivation for any aggressive expansion? Resource scarcity. What's their most scarce resource? Medical care. What do we have in abundance? Medical technology. It's basic supply and demand. Lieutenant Kor consulted his tablet with trembling hands. Corporal Murphy, even if your analysis is correct, how exactly do you propose we disable an entire battle fleet without destroying it? Denny's grin reached truly dangerous levels. I'm glad you asked. See those 200 confirmed saves I mentioned? Turns out about 60 of them were enemy combatants who refused to fight me again after I treated their injuries. Word gets around in military circles when someone keeps saving your life instead of taking it. And you think this will work on a fleet-wide scale? Admiral Krell Knox asked weakly. Already tested it, Danny replied cheerfully. Commander Zarthok just ordered his entire fleet to stand down for what he's calling emergency medical evaluation. Apparently, when you show someone how much better their crew could be functioning with proper medical care, tactical priorities start to shift. Engineer Piplo, who had been quietly monitoring communications, suddenly perked up. Sir, I'm receiving signals from 17 Vexstar vessels requesting medical assistance. They're actually asking for help. You see? Danny clapped his hands together with satisfaction. Sometimes, the best way to win a war is to make everyone too healthy and happy to want to fight it. The next 6 hours played out like a fever dream crossed with the galaxy's largest medical conference. Danny coordinated a massive humanitarian operation that turned a space battle into the most efficient field hospital in galactic history. Vexstar ships powered down their weapons to allow medical shuttles to dock. Enemy crew members who had been trying to kill each other hours earlier were now working together to stabilize casualties and share medical resources. Danny himself seemed to be everywhere at once, treating patients, training medics, and somehow convincing entire battle groups that cooperation was more effective than conquest. This is impossible, Admiral Krell Knox muttered, watching the tactical display show enemy vessels actually protecting the medical shuttles. He's turned a military engagement into a cooperative medical exercise. Sir, Lieutenant Kor reported, his voice filled with awe. I'm getting reports from across the fleet. Combat effectiveness is up 40%. Crew morale is at record highs, and apparently 3 different Vexstar commanders have requested transfers to our medical corps. He's not just treating their wounded, Captain Vexguy observed, watching the feeds in fascination. He's treating their entire military philosophy like a medical condition. And somehow, it's working. The final piece of Danny's impossible strategy came when Commander Zarthok himself appeared on the main view screen, looking healthier and more relaxed than he had in decades. Admiral Krell Knox, the Vexstar commander, began. I wish to discuss terms, not of surrender, but of cooperation. Your medic has shown us something we had forgotten in our pursuit of expansion, that strength comes not from conquest, but from the health and well-being of those under your command. Denny's cheerful voice chimed in from somewhere off-screen. Plus, I've got some ideas about establishing permanent medical exchanges between our civilizations. Think of the research possibilities. Admiral Krelnox looked around at his bewildered staff, then back at the view screen, where the galaxy's most feared military commander was apparently discussing healthcare policy with Earth's allegedly weakest soldier. "I think," he said slowly, "we may need to completely rewrite the manual on military strategy." 6 months later, the former battleground had been transformed into the galaxy's first interspecies medical station, with Danny Murphy as its unlikely director. Admiral Krelnox found him in what used to be a weapons bay, now converted into a state-of-the-art surgical suite, where Vexstar and Galactic Council medics worked side by side. "So, Corporal Murphy," the Admiral began, still struggling with the concept of addressing Earth's most effective military asset, "I have to ask the obvious question. Did Earth's command know this would happen when they sent you?" Denny looked up from a medical chart and grinned that same innocent grin that had started this whole mess. "Well, Admiral, let me put it this way. Earth has been dealing with human conflict for millennia. We've learned that the most dangerous person in any war isn't the one with the biggest gun, it's the one who refuses to use it. But surely they didn't expect you to end an entire galactic war through aggressive medical intervention." "Oh, they absolutely expected it," Danny replied cheerfully. "See those 200 confirmed saves I kept mentioning? About half of them were during Earth's own conflicts. Word gets around when someone keeps pulling enemy combatants out of burning vehicles and patching them up. Eventually, people stop shooting at you and start asking for help instead." Admiral Krelnox felt that familiar three-eye twitch returning. "So, when you said you were Earth's weakest soldier, I meant it. I've never killed anyone, never fired a shot in anger, never even thrown a proper punch. But here's the thing about weakness, Admiral. Sometimes refusing to fight makes you the strongest person in the room." Commander Zarthok chose that moment to arrive, looking remarkably healthy and carrying what appeared to be medical supplies. "Denny, the new medical exchange program is exceeding all projections. 3 more star systems want to join the cooperative." "Fantastic," Danny beamed. "See, Admiral? Give people healthcare instead of warfare and suddenly everyone wants to be friends. It's not exactly rocket science." "It's more complicated than rocket science," Admiral Krelnox muttered. "Rocket science makes sense." As if summoned by the conversation, Engineer Piplo appeared with his usual nervous energy, except now he seemed excited rather than terrified. "Corporal Murphy, sir, the Vexstar engineering teams have integrated their technology with our medical systems. The new surgical bays are operational and they want to name the main facility after you." "That's very flattering, but I think the Murphy Medical Center sounds a bit too formal," Danny replied thoughtfully. "How about the Second Chance Station? After all, that's what this whole thing has been about, giving everyone a second chance." Admiral Krelnox watched the former enemies chatting like old friends and shook his head in amazement. "I still don't understand how this worked. By every military principle ever written, your approach should have been disastrous." "That's because military principles assume everyone wants to fight," Danny replied with a shrug. "But most people don't actually want to fight. They want to survive, to be healthy, to protect the people they care about. Once you address those basic needs, the fighting becomes pretty unnecessary." "And Earth knew this?" Denny's grin became almost impossibly bright. "Admiral, Earth didn't become a unified planet through conquest. We learned that the hard way. When we finally figured out that cooperation worked better than competition, everything changed. We just thought it was time to share that lesson with the galaxy. By sending one medic to a war zone. By sending one medic who refuses to let anyone die on his watch," Danny corrected. "Whether they're friend or enemy doesn't really matter when someone's bleeding out in front of you." As if to prove his point, an alarm sounded from the emergency bay. Danny immediately grabbed his medical kit and headed for the door, calling back over his shoulder, "Duty calls! Admiral, if anyone asks, Earth's weakest soldier is in surgery." Admiral Krelnox watched him go, then turned to Commander Zarthok. "I don't suppose you understand this any better than I do." The former enemy commander chuckled, a sound that would have been impossible 6 months ago. "Admiral, I stopped trying to understand Danny Murphy and started just being grateful for him. Some things in the universe are too good to analyze. You just accept them and try to learn from them." "And what have you learned?" "That sometimes the weakest person is actually the strongest," Zarthok replied thoughtfully. "And that Earth's definition of weakness might be the rest of the galaxy's definition of wisdom." In the distance, they could hear Danny's cheerful voice echoing through the medical station. "Don't worry, everyone. We'll have you patched up and feeling better in no time. Now who wants to learn about proper wound care techniques?" Admiral Krelnox sighed and reached for his comm unit. He had a report to file with Galactic Command, and somehow he doubted they were going to believe a word of it. After all, how do you explain that the galaxy's most devastating war was ended not by superior firepower or tactical brilliance, but by one human who was too stubborn to let anyone die, and too cheerful to take no for an answer?